Good evening, folks. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to use a microphone because we are videotaping the presentation tonight, and then we'll have this up on the website. So if other folks want to take a look and see what's going on around school safety, and they'll be able to hear the audio part of the presentation. So we are videotaping tonight. We do have, Nelson is here from our media classes, or media instructor at the Tech Center, so he's videoing tonight. What we want to do is invite you folks to come in and kind of give you an idea of what we've been doing over the last 6 or 8 months around school safety, all the directions that we're trying to make our schools as safe as we possibly can, and there's an impact on you folks, obviously, as parents as well. So we're trying to bring you up to speed on some of the things we've have going on. We have multiple speakers tonight. They'll be brief. We don't want to keep you here all night, but they're going to update you on what's going on in each of their facilities and some of the things that they're talking about with staff, so you have an idea of where we are in the district. Over the past 7 or 8 months, we have all the members, or most of the members of the administration team, have been to multiple trainings on how to react to, how to prevent as well as we can, and how to deal with intruders in your facility. We've been to 2 trainings with Homeland Security. We've been to 1 training that was put on by the FBI. We've been to a training that was put on by TRC Consulting, which is a big safety firm down in southern Maine. And we also did a tabletop exercise with all the members of the administration team plus our social workers in the district. And we did that with the Dexter Fire Department, Dexter Police Department, Maine State Police, Penobscot County Emergency Management, Penobscot County Sheriff's Department, Red Cross, CDC was here. So we had a wonderful training exercise with all of the stakeholders around the table and talked a lot about locally, what might a response look like? What do they need from us? We had a member from the Penobscot County Sheriff's Department. They don't call it the SWAT team, but whatever their response team is, he came in and did some training with us and kind of helped us through things we should be thinking about right now. We have an administrative team, a safety team, that has met 3 or 4 times as we work through some of these details. We have had a couple of other committees grow out of that, and we'll talk about those a little bit later tonight. So again, we just want you to get a better understanding of what we've been doing, and then certainly there'll be an opportunity for a question and answer session at the end, and hopefully be able to help you understand a little bit more about what we're doing. I'm just going to touch on a few little things. Some of the things we've been doing for several years, but it's a reminder for everybody. After buses arrive in the morning, we're in a soft lockdown for the rest of the day until dismissal, meaning all of our doors are locked during the day. You do have a vestibule to come through in this building. Those of you that have been to the high school in the last week or 2, Mr. Bell will talk a little bit and maybe show you a picture of the new entryway at the high school as we try to make that building a little bit more secure. So there's some things that you've seen. We now have numbered each of our entries in all of our buildings outside. So if you drive up front here, the top gym entry is number 1, and it goes clockwise all the way around the building. All things to help emergency responders find where they need to go, or with some help from us, know where to go a little bit quicker to save in response time. We have, and the administrators will talk about it just a little bit, we've changed our all-call system in all of our buildings. To do an all-call, 1, it could only be done from the office, and 2, it was a process star something, 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 something. So we've changed that, so it's a 1-button push now. Every classroom teacher has 1 button they can push and do an all-call to kind of give everybody in the school an idea if something's going on in their area of the school building. We have Down in the corner, my wing of this building, the superintendent's office area and the special education area, we had a set of doors that came into the building that opened in, but you had to have a key fob to get back into my area. We flipped those doors around. So now no one can get through those doors into the school unless obviously someone lets them in or they have a key fob. So little things like that, we've been trying to, through our conversations and through our committee work, try to find as many areas as we possibly can that we can make the building as safe as possible. We have school board approved emergency plans for all of our schools. They are about 100 pages long, very thorough. Hopefully we never have to use them, but we do have a complete handbook that we can pull out and use very quickly. And I want to thank the school board. We have a couple of board members here. Let's have the board members introduce themselves, if you would. Levi, do you want to start? We were very, very fortunate. In this year's budget, the school board approved our request of $42,000 for school safety. And the majority of it this year has gone to the high school facility. But it's a really important piece as we fund as many of these safety measures as we can. And we're always walking that fine line with you as parents. We want our buildings to be warm and welcoming, but we also want them to be safe. And so that's a fine line in some cases. If you've been in the schools recently, there's a few more locked doors. You have to be let into a few more places. And that's all part of us trying to keep your children as safe as we possibly can while we're here. We also, in thanks to the school board and to the town of Dexter, we now have a school resource officer who's working 5 days a week with us now. Granted, it's some of the day here, some of the day at the high school. So we have one for the district. But I want to have him take just a few minutes and kind of tell you what he's been doing, what he's up to. Our resource officer is Alan Drew, and maybe I can get him to tell you a quick story. He is pretty close to a rock star in this building. Anybody that's been in the building, he high-fives kids. They come running down to see him, and they high-five him, Mr. Drew. He's handing out stickers. If your child comes home with a fake tattoo sticker, it probably came from him. You can blame him. One of the most important pieces for a school resource officer is to create relationships with kids in the building so that they're not scared when they see an officer. They understand he's here to help them. And you talk to any of the administrators that have had Mr. Drew in the building, it's unbelievable. He even, every once in a while, I'm out in the hallway in the morning, he does morning announcements here at Ridgeview quite often in the morning. And if you ask your kids about it, I think it's a fun time. It's an anticipated time. So just a few minutes to kind of tell you what he does over the course of his day and maybe the week, and then we can kind of move on from there. He attempts to. I think he tried once and they stopped him. But Officer Drew, and this is the way he looks every day. He's in full uniform and he is carrying a weapon. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. So, Officer Drew.
Thank you very much. So, I've been doing this full-time this year. I think it's been 2.5 years now that I was part-time for a while. So I'm glad to be here 5 days a week. It gives me more time with the kids. Doesn't matter whether they're here at the high school or tech center. So my day basically is I just mingle with the kids. I come in the morning. I'm usually here in the morning. You might see me out front welcome the kids in off the buses. I make sure that they come in and I try to get a smile on their face when they show up in the morning to start their day off right. And I do announcements and a few other things. So then I try to make my way around the 6th grade. I've kind of taken them under my wing. Last year at the 5th grade level, it's hard to take all the kids under your wing, but I've got a few kids that I've gotten pretty fond of, and I'm trying to help them along because of just some of their situations. So I'll hang out here for a while. if the social worker has something for me to do, or the vice principal or the principal, and then I'll deal with that. And what I mean by that is maybe a troubled kid in the morning needs me to talk to him. And I've been here long enough now that I can talk to them, and usually they come around and they get back in their classroom and they're doing pretty good. Then I'll go to the high school and go in there. I have an office there now. Thank you, Steve Bell, for doing that. And I'll go and I'll mingle with the kids at lunchtime there. There's a few, I've been here 2.5 years, so there's a few kids there that approach me now and they want to talk about certain things. At this level here, not as much, but the high school level, it took me a while to get in there and get comfortable with those kids. And now they'll say, Officer Drew, if you got a minute, I need to talk to you about something. Whereas in 2.5 years ago, they didn't even want to look at me. So it's kind of good there. The tech center, they actually let me in there once in a while. Same thing. And one thing about the tech center is different is they come from all over, different towns. So they're maybe not used to seeing the police officers as much as in their school when they go back. So I try to intermingle with them too. Am I an Uber driver? Yes, I'm an Uber driver. I could be giving kids a ride home that need a ride home. Do I go pick up kids that need a ride to school because their parents can't bring them to school and they missed the bus? Yes, I'll do that. Because part of my job is truancy. We want to see the kids here in school. So yes, I will do that. Cheering at a basketball game or whatever. So, and being at sporting events. And yes, the stickers come out and the tattoos. So I tell them maybe, don't put the tattoos on your forehead, please, because mommy and daddy will get mad at me. So they don't do that. So basically, I'm a resource for the school administration staff. If they need me, I'm there. I'm a resource for the kids. If they need me, I'm there. Also, is I patrol the grounds, make sure that the schools are secure. So that's about my day. And in the afternoon, like today I was at the high school, and they're all getting on the buses. I'm talking to them and making sure they get out of school safely. I do it here also. So, and then also parents have called me and had voiced concerns about situations, or they want me to talk to their child, and I'll do that also. So I'm working with administrators, the teachers, the faculty, and the parents. So that's basically a role of a school resource officer. All right, so thank you for any questions? You want me off easy? You got one? No. I should have brought a couple ringers in and added some questions like the politicians do. Oh, sorry. Okay, good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Drew. We're going to go through, each building administrator now is going to give you a quick update of the things that are going on in their building or changes that have recently been made in their building, so you have an idea. And we're going to start with Mr. Bell from the high school.
All right, good evening. Looking around, most of you I know, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Bell. I have been principal, or been an assistant principal, now the principal at Dexter Regional High School since 1999. So this is my 20th year there. I'll try to keep this brief. The slideshow is nothing special. I simply gave a list to some of my students and said, go take pictures of these things on the list. And the list, when Kevin talked about this meeting, I said, I'll put together some of the safety improvements that we have at the high school that I can share with you tonight. So we'll just kind of zing through these. If you have questions specific to what we're talking about on each slide, feel free to raise your hand and we'll stop right then, or you can save them to the end and I can answer them at that point. So this is Dexter Regional High School. And some of this Mr. Jordan alluded to, so a little bit repetitive, but we do have a brand new entryway at the high school. It actually, if you've never been to the school, like I've got a couple new international kids that just showed up and they're walking through, they don't realize what it used to look like. It's just, they feel it's always been that way. Most of you know our school was built in the mid to late 60s, so it's an old building, 50 plus years old. And trying to bring it up to code and bring it up to safety, standards that we want has been difficult, but the board has been very supportive. So anyway, we've got a new lobby. Those doors you're looking at there with the new office, those are bulletproof, the glass. A lot of times when we're in these safety meetings, it's all about time and buying time for your first responders to get there. So if we can hold up whatever's going on, I'm not going to try to get into those dangerous situations, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. That's meant to, hold somebody off and buy us some time. With that was a new office. Again, if you've been to the school and had a child pass through there or been to our games, you know that that used to be the old varsity store where they sold food and candy and popcorn. That is now Mrs. Kite's new home. It's also where you'll find Officer Drew if you come to the high school. So this is on the, what I'll call the student side of things, so it's a sliding glass so when kids check in. The other side, this side is the other side of her office, but that side is also bulletproof, so she's fully protected in there in the case of a dangerous situation. So that is actually taken from inside that new entryway. So again, we're very appreciative of the upgrades, and Dave Gudrow and his crew did a lot of that work, and it does not look like the varsity store in there now. If you were stopping to see Miss Kite, she's very proud of her new home. Mr. Shaw was very excited that I took his picture, or had his picture taken. We've been dabbling with camera systems for years now, and this year though, Mr. Shaw and his son Logan put in, geez, I think we're up over 30 cameras around the school now, and they're just so much better in what they pick up. And I will tell you, it's not just the motion and the kids, but it also picks up sound and voice. So it's a pretty impressive system. The other thing that's impressive, Officer Drew, if there was something going on, he could be here at Ridgeview, but he can pull that up on his smartphone or on his tablet. They can pull it up at the police station. I can pull it up, if we're in an emergency situation, a lockdown, I can pull it up on my computer and watch what's going on upstairs. So it's a very elaborate system, but it also one of the things that makes the school safer. You know, I want to make it clear we don't use it to spy on the kids. It's one of those, if something's happened, we certainly go back and use it to review the situation. But I think that's one of the better safety upgrades we've added to the school, and I appreciate the work Mr. Shaw and his son did. Officer Drew just talked to you. I could stand here for an hour and talk about all the things he's done for our school. And to be honest, it's really the relationship building. If you like watching him interact with the kids tonight, waiting for the bus, building that trust, so when the crap does hit the fan, and hopefully that never happens, but he's a familiar face. The kids love him. And like you said, he's at our games, he sits in PET meetings, he's just done a wonderful job, so we're really excited to have that. And it's awesome to have a full-time position. Like you said, it was part-time for a couple of years, now we're full-time, and he does a nice job. It's a rare day that he doesn't make it to the high school, and he is the most expensive taxi driver in town, by the way. We also added a full-time social worker a couple years ago, and a lot of these things I'm talking about, yeah, we do the facility upgrades, but some of it is the prevention. So when you add positions like Alan and the resource officer or Miss Weber to your social worker to deal with these kids and deal with whether the trauma that's already going on in their lives and the things that are going on. We all know, you know, you can all read the papers and those types of things, what goes on in the country, and these kids and ideas get planted, but she does a lot of work with our student population, and I think diffuses a lot of things before it gets to a level where Alan has to deal with it or I have to deal with it. So she was a tremendous addition to our school. The first aid kits, this is a simple one, but it's been in the classrooms every year, but the nurses are doing a real nice job restocking those. I'll talk about a little later, the Stop the Bleed training, but every classroom you'll find one of those. Actually goes all the way back to Frank Spazzucco donated those to the district years and years ago. So every classroom in the district had those, but they also get restocked every year. We did add a full-time nurse, that's Miss Angie Bucher, and again, just having a medical professional in the school, I can't speak to, and again, hopefully it never happens, but if you have that emergency situation, just having her in the building will be a tremendous asset. So that's another position we've added. Some of the things, again, Mr. Jordan talked about, we removed all the outside handles, so somebody just can't walk up and grab a door and walk into our school. I would say 90% of the doors at the high school, that's what we've done. So that was, again, a recommendation that we were hearing from other schools and districts, and we thought it was a good idea, so Mr. Gudrow carried that out. The numbers are for the first responders. Mr. Jordan again talked about that. So every door, when they arrive, if they know that if there's a problem, it's at door number 13 or wherever that is, it makes more sense to them than it does to us. I haven't figured out why our front door is number 2, but it has to do with their standards and why they do it that way. We also, you heard about the red button all call. That's actually in Mr. Webb's room. You can see the upper right corner. And I think that was a big upgrade. So if something truly difficult or bad is happening in your school, the fact that either a student, a staff member, whatever it is, can get to that phone, push that one button, and put us in an all-call instantly is a major improvement over where we were just months ago, to be honest with you. This is a fairly new thing. And that's the only time that is to be used for an all-call. We still do the traditional things, same things everybody here did when you were a kid. We do the fire drills, we do the lockdown drills. We did a mass movement lockdown drill last year, so kids were on the way to lunch because we wanted to see how the kids would react. Lockdowns are real easy when they're already sitting in a classroom. But what do you do when it's at lunchtime or break time or before school? And unfortunately, when you look into a lot of those national tragedies, they were happening at those types of times, so we wanted to practice that situation so the kids knew what to do. District and school level safety teams, all the members you hear and you're going to hear from tonight are on these teams, and when there's monthly meetings, multiple teams. It's a horrible picture. I did a screen grab from the fire department, but you get the idea. I would just want to say, I think it was the fire department that really took a lead and said, we need to meet as an area and get the schools on board. So I think it was Matt was one of the ones that really took the lead, and I don't see him here tonight. But he took the bull by the horns, and he organized some of the trainings that we've had. So I just want to recognize and thank what he did for our district. Some of the training, again, we have school nurses. All the staff been trained, well, not all the staff, all the administrators in stop the bleed, CPR, first aid, and AED use. So again, training, professional development. Some of the quick things you'll find at the school, these are really, really simple ideas, but again, in the idea of buying time. Each classroom, so if we're in a lockdown, the teachers and the students know, obviously the doors are already locked up, your traditional lock, but there's also a secondary lock at the bottom, simple hardware. But again, if a teacher forgot to lock a door or somebody's trying to get in, you got an intruder trying to get in that classroom, they may find their way in through the first lock, but they're probably not going to pull that piece of hardware off the bottom of the door. We also have the shades. That's basically visibility. The kids know they're hiding in the corner. Hopefully that intruder doesn't know that there are kids in that classroom. So we've got the shades so they can't see them. We've got the locks both up and down on the doors. Mr. Jordan talked about the emergency plan and the go bags. Ms. Sinclair, she was pretty impressed when I took her picture. So, but again, that's in every school. All the principals may talk about that a little bit, but you can see that thick emergency plan she's holding. That would go with us. If something happened and we had to evacuate and we would come here, by the way, that's our evacuation site. We'd bus the kids. We would come here to Ridgeview, and the whole relocation plan and everything is in that bag. I did want to recognize TCTC and law enforcement. I know Mr. Spaulding's here. His kids come over. They've done it multiple times, usually in the spring when we do some lockdown drills. His kids help us. They'll actually run it for us, and then he comes to me with a laundry list of, these are your weak spots. This is a problem area you need to take care of, or if you had a situation, this would be a problem. You know, these doors are unlocked. I could hear kids in this classroom. My kids could see. You know, so I just appreciate what they do with us and work with us every year. And it's a blessing for us, to be honest, to have Colonel Spaulding right there and his police training and background on. We do have tip lines and hotlines, I'll be honest. They're not used a lot, but they are there. They're available for the kids. So if they're seeing things, hearing things, feeling things, they do have an outlet. They can report it. Miss Weber's done a nice job. Our kids are posting a lot of these things in our bathrooms. So if there's a kid thinking about suicide type of things, there are hotlines available to them. I just felt I wanted to add, like I said, safety plans, again, it's not always about your building and things like that. We do a lot of culture building activities, so kids feel involved. They feel part of the school. That's just a picture of one of our color games. I'm not even sure what year it was, but you can see the entire red on the left, the white team on the right. We do a lot of that to just make the kids feel part of the school and included. And we also have an advisory program that's been in place, geez, I want to say probably the early 2000s. And the neat thing about that, every teacher in the school is an advisor. They talk about every kid being connected to one adult. This is where we take care of that. And every advisory you could have your special ed kids, your potential valedictorian, it's a little mix of everything. Your international kids are in there. We intentionally make that group as diverse as possible. The force kids, because a lot of times, you know, your kids might be sitting in all AP classes and they never really get to associate or deal with a special ed child. And this is the one place in their education where they have to get to know each other, work with each other, and build some of those relationships. So advisories is part of our plan too. The last is just, if you need to reach out to me, it's always an open door. The phone number's for the school, my personal number's there, my email's there. Stop in and just come in and we'll sit down and talk about it. I'll give you the tour of the school and let you know what's going on. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Mr. Kisman went home ill today, so he's not here to give you an update of what's been going on here at Ridgeview. Honestly, there's less going on here at Ridgeview because it's a much newer facility. A lot of the things were taken care of when we built the school. The double doors coming in. One of the big things that we've done here, and it's been difficult because of the size of the facility, is we've narrowed down the entrances to the building and the exits. So staff members are coming through the front door now, and that's it, in the morning. And we've heard a lot of training from Homeland Security. You need to know who's coming in your building at all times. And if we have staff members coming through the front door, we have administrators all over the front yard and the lobby area every day, and teachers. And so that helps us control the flow of traffic coming in here. A lot of things have taken place, just like the high school, with shades and doors and things like that. Staff has been trained on how to react if something's going on. We have lots of conversations here about the doors out here in the lobby area. One of the things we're considering is leaving those shut and locked all the time. Now that creates a little bit of an inconvenience. If you have a first grader come down to get the milk or something and then has to go back to their classroom, there's some logistics that we're trying to figure out. But it's always a conversation about how can we make the building a little bit safer. We are also changing the glass around the vestibule windows where you can report in to make those bullet resistant. To give, again, Mr. Bell mentioned, the first thing Homeland Security trains you on or teaches you is you've got to put as many barriers in place as you can from someone who's coming into the building to try to create harm, to allow response time for law enforcement to get here. So those are just a few of the things that are going on here. As I said, the building is much safer than a 50-plus-year-old building at the high school, so we're in pretty good shape here. Mr. Drew mentioned he does do a tour of the outside grounds and facilities every day, pulls on doors, double checks doors, makes sure they're locked. So that's kind of a quick update here at Ridgeview. Dr. ONeill has some things that he'd like to walk you through at the Tech Center. If you've been to the Tech Center lately, you can get in the front door, but that's as far as you're going, so unless you're allowed to go somewhere. So, Dr. ONeill.
Thank you. Unlike the high school, we're also a training facility, and the thing that we do the very first day of school is we have all the kids in assembly, and I go over the safety rules because safety is a real important factor in our school. I tell the kids not to scare them, but maybe a little bit, that we have enough equipment in there that'll slice, dice, crush, burn, and they have to be aware of that. So safety is always a daily concern at our school. You may recall in 2015, January 9th at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from the superintendent that the building was on fire. The school was virtually gutted from that fire. We had a fire that was between the walls of the building trades and machining program that went on for about 9 hours and really did a lot of damage in the facility. But as a result of rebuilding the school, we built in some safety factors, and I want to go through those with you. As Mr. Jordan mentioned, all of our entries are closed except for the front door. Teachers have fobs, which are electronic keyless entry devices. That fob records the teacher, the time that they go into the building. They also have keys to get into their particular shop areas. But primarily when we come into the building, it's through the front door, and the students leave through the front door, in and out. There's a sign-in list that everybody has to sign into if they're a guest or coming in to visit a teacher, etc. And they sign out when they leave. They're issued a guest pass, and they're called to the front office if they're visiting a teacher. The teacher will send the student down, or they will go down themselves and escort that person to the area of the program that they run. The fob is also important because it's assigned to every teacher, and we guard it with our lives, so to speak. The other part of the vestibule, a very small vestibule if you come in the front door, but it's an area where there are 3 doors and they're all locked down. The receptionist is behind a safety glass that can take a .45 caliber shot at close range without penetration. So it's a very, very safe area. If in the event that we have an intruder, that person could very easily be locked in there until the police came. However, during the course of our training. We do have lockdowns, and to mention again, Colonel Spaulding and his students participate with the staff, and pretty much they watch how we react to a lockdown. His students will list things that we did right, things that we did wrong, and then as a staff we debrief, and we're always trying to make our positions stronger and more resilient to any kind of intruder. We have 19 cameras in and outside the building. Not as sophisticated as the high schools, but we're working on getting those as well. Our cameras, however, we have 2 huge banks. We have one in the main office and we have one in the teacher's room. It shows every program in the building. It shows the outer buildings. And we look at those things pretty much every day to make sure that there are no intruders in and around the property. If there are, typically myself or Mrs. Hanson will go out and challenge a person that doesn't look like they belong there. And 9 times out of 10, it's somebody that's lost. They want to get into the high school, or they want to see a teacher because they have supplies that they have to deliver. Either way, we make sure that anybody in the building is supervised. We also have what they call a kill switch in all of our programs. Kill switch will turn off the electricity. In the main office, the kill switch will lock all the entrance doors. So if we go into a tight lockdown, we hit the kill switch and everything goes on hold. We have a very sophisticated alarm system for both fire and intrusion. It's very loud. The kids are conditioned to that when we have our drills. But if you're an intruder, I would dare say, Steve, standing in that 10 minutes would drive you crazy, correct? So the whole idea is to get you out of the building. And lately, Colonel Spaulding and our EMS instructor have trained for what they call the ALICE program, which is a corporate group of security people that have come up with a program that deals with evacuation techniques. The first thing to do if there is an intruder is to name the location and get people out of the building. And then from there, it gets a little bit more aggressive. If you're in a lockdown in a room, basically survival techniques are employed. We're still in the infancy of that. We haven't really introduced it into our programs yet, but it's yet another tool in the arsenal to prevent any kind of violence in our schools. We try to teach the kids that this is part of life. Most of the violence that you read and hear in the news today is usually job-related. However, we do have these school tragedies that we deal with, but students need to know when they come through our programs that they're being conditioned to go into the world of work, and these are the expectations today that we have to deal with. And pretty much that's our safety issues at the Tech Center. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Neill. Transportation has become a big part of our conversation. And so I'd like to introduce our Transportation Director, Shelley Bennett, and she'll kind of walk you through some of the things that our bus drivers have been doing as part of our safety process.
Excuse me. We haven't really started doing a whole lot of things. We had a class with Mr. Spaulding September, October, about what to look for. Kid was getting on the bus one day and he acted different than what he would normally. In your gut, if it doesn't feel right, then it probably is. And I have drivers that do that almost daily. I had emergency management come one day, active threat on a school bus. We went through what if somebody came on the bus with a gun. You know, what are you as a driver going to do? Here are some defensive steps that you can take. One of the big questions that the gentleman asked was, what if a kid come up to tell you that another kid had a gun on the bus? What's your reaction going to be? What are our steps? And a lot of the drivers were like, ooh, never really thought about that. Well, we are thinking about that now. We have done a dry run evacuation. We started at the high school and came over here, and then we went back to the garage, and then we started from here and went to the high school to find out how long it's going to take to get out everybody. I think the high school was about a half an hour by the time all my drivers got in and got here, and Ridgeview was like 50 minutes. And I got some more things that we're gonna be doing here in the next couple of weeks and whatever, but as of right now, that's as far as we have gotten. But we're working on it.
Couple of quick things. I sat in the bus driver training that day, and when they looked at the bus drivers and said, okay, you've got a call on the radio, you have a student on your bus who's confirmed to be carrying a weapon and they've said they're coming to school to do some harm, what are you going to do as a bus driver? And I can tell you they were all speechless. They sat there going. And by the time they worked through it, they had some ideas of their own. You know, well, number one, we're certainly not bringing the bus to school. Number two, somebody suggested maybe we fake that there's a mechanical issue on the bus and somehow react from there. One bus driver said, I'm going to drive right into the police department parking lot downtown. I'm going to pull right in there. So the conversation was as important as what the final answer was. So the bus drivers are really taking a interest in how they might be able to help in these situations. Some of our training with the Penobscot County Sheriff's Department also was in an evacuation situation. They could care less if the person driving the bus has a bus driver's license or a bicycle license. If you can drive a bus, somebody get on the bus and get the kids out of there. Between Shelley and the mechanics and the drivers that live right here in town, we have 3 or 4 that are reasonably close. That may not be quick enough. So all of our maintenance folks, they can get on a bus and they can move it with kids. So we've had that conversation with Penobscot County. So I'm appreciative that Shelley and her group is having some conversations on what they can do from their end of a safety issue with the district. We have also become more active around medical trainings, and Crystal Greaves is here as our nursing director for the district, and she's really pushed several initiatives, and I'll have her come up and just kind of walk you through quickly some of the things that we've done and a little more information on. She's a certified national Stop the Bleed trainer, and I'll have her explain that a little bit too.
So we have been doing first aid and CPR training in the district as well as the AED, like Mr. Bell had mentioned, for several years. The Stop the Bleed training, both Angie and I became certified last year, and we've done some trainings on that as well. That is in the event of an emergency that our teachers and our administration could respond to that emergency, even if we are in a lockdown. So if we have, Angie or I in our office stuck there, the teachers and administration could also provide that first aid and the necessary medical response. Any questions?
Thank you. The Stop the Bleed training came out of, was it the FBI? A lot of research done through cameras in buildings where there have been mass casualties. Either Homeland Security or FBI, I can't remember which. And their analysis was, if the people in the building who were not injured had a better understanding of how to help those that were, it would have saved many, many, many lives. So administration and some of the staff has had the Stop the Bleed training. A lot of it is around tourniquet use, proper techniques to stop the bleeding and things like that that has been proven to save lives. And we're continuing to train our staff members. We're doing that through some of our early release days. And we're not forcing staff members to do it. We're highly encouraging. Some of it is a little bit gory, but Crystal and Angie do a wonderful job getting us through that. So that's a piece that now is really taking off with us. Along with the physical aspects of school safety, we've started to do a lot more preventative type things. How do we recognize student who may be having issues, who really needs a little bit more focus? Maybe it's a student that's made a threat, maybe it's a student that has not made a threat. We have a team now led by Karen Gudrow, who's running two separate committees to look at some of these things, and I'll have her explain what they've been doing to you folks.
Mr. Jordan nicely reminded me I volunteered for this last fall, which I didn't remember. So when we did the tabletop before school started with all of Penobscot County and some of the state folks, our administration team met after that training and kind of debriefed. Where do we want to go next? What do we need to do? And so out of that, we kind of created two committees. And one is looking at the systems issues. So we have a disaster manual, but going through it more specifically. And Mr. Jordan is constantly feeding us the latest information from the Secret Service or the FBI about best practices. So we're starting to compare, what the experts are saying with what our manual says, and we may bring things to the school board eventually, but also to tease out what does that look like. So there's a preparedness manual, but what would that look like in real life? So Shelley having the buses ready to come get us, creating a master list of everybody who could drive the bus for us if we needed them to. If we had to evacuate this building and reunify the 600 and some odd students with their parents, how would we do that as efficiently as we could about maintaining safety? So that's one of our charges right now, and the systems committee is to really look more deeply at that reunification plan and how we would do that in a systematic way. And we have multiple resources, one out of Colorado that we're looking at seriously on how to set that up. So hopefully we'll never have to use it, but I've been around too long, so I remember Dexter Middle School going to the high school and us reunifying children with their parents. Oh my gosh, it must have been 15 years ago. So we'll keep working on those things. Staff can bring issues to us. Mr. Jordan has asked us to look at several issues, and we'll continue to do that. The second committee, which is probably nearer and dearer to my heart as a social worker, is kind of how do we prevent risks, okay? And I'm gonna make everyone nervous because I'm gonna tell you, all the research says there is no one predictor of who might do violence at a school, okay? There is no diagnosis, there's no behavior that says there's gonna be a problem at your school. But we can look at preventative measures by looking at risk factors and protective factors. What about a situation would prevent this from happening, and what might instigate that it could happen? So this second committee, again, it's members of the high school and the tech center and Ridgeview, and we're meeting and talking about those situations that are concerning to staff or about students that we're working with. And again, driven by the Secret Service and the FBI and their best recommendations. So we meet on a monthly basis, and we'll continue to meet as needed to talk about any situation that we feel is a concern for the building. Any questions? Oh, sorry. Hi. So say a little more, Erica. I want to make sure. So if you were a spectator or a volunteer at a sporting event,
and an issue happened, does the coach know where to take the kids?
okay.
I didn't know where to take the kids.
Yep. Yep. That's a great.
So I just really feel like those who are in the school on a regular basis know this stuff as well.
That's a great idea. So somehow training volunteers or those that just coach or, those things, make sure that they know the emergency procedures as well. What folks are getting is just a quick handout. And on one side, there are sort of preventative ways how you as parents or community members could help us avoid us being in the national headlines or any risk of harm to students or staff here in our buildings. And it's so much, especially by the middle school years, around social media, making sure that you are tracking what your child or your loved ones are doing on social media, making sure you keep that good connection with your kiddos and know what's happening for them in their world. If you have a concern, whether it's your own child or someone else's, we really encourage you to share that either with law enforcement or us here in the building. There are social workers and guidance counselors in each of the buildings or administrators that are happy to talk to you at any time. At the risk of being, I don't know, what isn't helpful is spreading rumors and gossip on Facebook. I'm going to be really honest, that's, shoot the messenger. But perpetuating information that may or may not be true isn't helpful. It isn't helpful to the students, it's not helpful to staff. If you have a concern, please tell us or tell law enforcement so that we can investigate it and make sure that kids are safe. The other side of that pamphlet talks very much about in the case of an emergency, and again, I'm going to be the bad guy again, because I am sure as you're sitting here and if you read through the suggestions, you're going to say, but that won't apply to me because my situation's different. If we're ever in a situation of an emergency, I understand it's going to be, the anxiety level is going to be overwhelming, but trying to come into our building or come to this building in that moment is not going to be helpful. Trying to call our building in that moment isn't going to be helpful. It is going to be law enforcement coming on scene and taking care of what they need to take care of. And we need every available person, to stay out of the way of those emergency vehicles. So I understand, I've had children in this district and grandchildren in this district, and what I'm asking is almost like cutting off your arm, right? But we need to keep kids safe, and we will do everything in our power to keep your child safe. Questions for me? Pointing.
Thank you, Karen. Again, one of the biggest issues around some of these events that have taken place is somebody somewhere had heard something, didn't think it was important enough to pass along. We implore you folks, if you hear something, your children hear something, we talk to the kids about see something, say something, let people know. Let us do the investigation and figure out whether it's valid or not. We would rather do 100 investigations that are not valid than miss one. Doesn't happen in all cases, but in many of them, someone came forward afterward and said, well, my son said something, or my daughter said something. Please call us, please let us know, let us do the investigation. The administrators are very capable of doing that. We have a law enforcement officer in our building, so we can get pretty quickly onto something and determine the validity or not of a situation. I have a question for you, and then we'll open it up for your questions. We do lockdown practices in this building. We do them once a year. In the beginning of the year, pretty low key. It's announced, we do it, the kids know we're going to do it. Then we have Dexter PD go through the building and kind of check doors and give us an opinion on things that they see when they go through the building. We're starting to hear some research now about this is causing trauma to some younger kids across the country. And I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts on this. The areas that it seemed to focus on are those people that did lockdown drills that went another step, had students in the hallway pretending to be victims and things like that. We don't do any of that. It's very straightforward. Lock the door, pull a shade, and we're in the corner. Our question to you is, do any of you have thoughts? Have your kids ever mentioned being bothered by the lockdown practices, or does anybody have any strong feelings? We would certainly like to know. It's a conversation we have every year, about how do we do it and what do we do. And I know the high school does a couple of lockdowns each year. Not anywhere near as much research on that causing issues with high school kids. A little more mature, understand what's going on a little bit better. So does anybody have any feelings about lockdown practices? Sure.
Are all kids aware of all the things that are in the presentation as far as the extra precautions that we put in place other than the lockdown drills?
Probably not all of them. We don't necessarily publicize everything that we've done around school safety. Kids are aware of a lot of it, but I don't think I could say they're aware of everything, no.
So I feel that it's like my daughter's pretty identified as a school shooter.
Yep.
And I feel that if it was taking a little bit more than just having a drill and running through it and experiencing it, if they knew that there was X amount of locks and X amount of entrances, if they knew that much more of the implications,
Yep.
she might not be as scared that when we're doing the drill,
Yep.
there's no precautions.
That's a really good point. So educationally, we could do a better job without scaring the kids, but bringing them up to speed a little bit more about everything that we've got in place. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Yep. Sure. Just the timing, yep. Yep.
So I know we're in a very tiny minority of people that can do it. We have a fairly cohesive population, and then once in a while, that's what it is.
Right.
I'm looking at it from that standpoint, coming in and not having.
Yep, absolutely.
The second part of, I don't know how many other people are in that same room, whether they come in for band, theater, that's one thing to remember.
Yep.
The second piece is why we got the information is because Mrs. Dyer was kind enough to take the time to, have that conversation with us. We then were able to translate it for our son and say, if this happens, this is what you need to know.
Yep.
Because prior to that, no knowledge, I think is a lot more frightening
Absolutely.
than adequate.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's part of the reason we have conversations like this to show those holes, places where we could be better. And we'll jot that down, and that's a great point.
My gut is I agree with you that probably don't need to go to the first step of having the next case
Right.
on the ground, but I think that having a plan is a comfort, much more so than I've got my head in the sand and now I don't know what to do.
Right, right.
That's more comfort.
Yeah. What they're saying is you train your staff in the lockdown procedures, but you don't involve the kids at all. We've involved the kids in the past, so we were just curious if anybody had heard any real complaints. Our administrators and our teachers, as part of our plan, have taken into account all of the students who have whatever their issues are, whatever their disabilities are. When a student comes through the door in a wheelchair because they've broken an ankle, that triggers a response with our administration. Okay, if we go into lockdown or if we go into evacuation, how are people going to handle that? So I believe, I don't know the answer in your specific case, but the teachers and the administration, they know they have a plan for every one of those students. And we also, it's tied a little bit to it. We have some students that when you have a fire alarm, a fire drill, they just, if they don't know it's coming, they become much more difficult to deal with. They don't deal with that very well. In our practices, we'll let them know it's coming ahead of time. And there's that debate. We did a lockdown one time here without letting the staff know it was going to happen. And we did it intentionally and got a lot of real negative feedback, so we haven't done that since. So it's, how do we make sure we're as prepared as we can be without sending some people, into places we don't want them to be. So I would guarantee the teacher has in their plan exactly what they're going to do with your child.
So Crystal, for like in your son's situation, the staff is prepared and what they'll probably do, they go have a bathroom, is they'll go into the bathroom, but each student probably has their iPad, their headphones, their, whatever their safety object is, will go with them. And that's how we try to comfort and soothe them in that situation that they is an unknown to them.
Other questions? Comments? We thank all of you for coming tonight. We'll do another one of these either later in the year or first thing in the fall with a continued update of things that we're working on right now. And we appreciate you being here very much. And I can't emphasize enough, help us be a part of keeping the buildings safe. If you hear something wonky that's going on, if you hear a conversation in the community, let us know. And then we'll dig into it a little bit, and we'll determine what the next steps are from there. Thank you all, and thank you for being here tonight. Thanks.